sermon today. We are continuing with our sermon series called The Forgiving Challenge. We are in week 4, day 20 in the book. That book is like a daily devotional that you can kind of go through as we're going through this sermon series here. And this sermon series is all about forgiving. But it's not like you better be a forgiving person or that's not what this is about. So because oftentimes we have problems even forgiving ourselves and seeing forgiveness in and of right here. And I think if we can realize that we are forgiven, then we become factories of forgiveness outside of here. And so we throughout this sermon series, we've been working with an acronym of SCARS. Remember that first week, it was all about doubting Thomas and wanting to see the scars of Jesus. And we see that by Jesus' wounds, we are healed, right? By his scars over there. And so the first week, we talked about sin. Second week, we talked about confession. And this week, it's talking about forgiveness. Absolution, right? That's why we say confession, absolution, kind of a churchy word there, but we're talking about forgiveness. And it kind of leads to this question of like, what is forgiveness? What is it, right? What does to forgive even mean? Like, yeah, we understand that it's to cancel a debt. Okay, great. Like, what does that mean? Like, it's great to have a debt canceled, right? Like, if any of you want to help pay off my mortgage, like, I'd be indebted to you, right? All those ideas, we can cancel a debt, but like around churchy circles, we're like, oh, okay, like that's over there. And I think we give it kind of lip service, like forgiveness, lip service, like, yeah, I'm forgiven. Like, but we still will cross paths with someone that we have beef with, or that has hurt us, or that we have hurt them, and suddenly we'll revert, or we'll see them we'll see them at Publix, and we'll quickly go to the next aisle, you know. And so I think so. Forgiveness is to stop feeling angry and resentful towards someone. To be free from that stress of being pulled down into it. To be free, be a freedom from that anger, resentful because someone made an offense or a mistake or a flaw. To not just give lip service to it, but be able to actually see that person once again and not feel those strong emotions. Because forgiveness is all about that emotion today. And that's what we see happens in Peter. So before we talk about that, we got to talk about smell. We got to talk about smell. And so smell is this incredibly powerful emotive force in us. Like you can smell something that you haven't smelt in a long time, it'll just take you right back there. I mean, just a small microcosm of it. When we came back from Haiti, I had a very sensible sized bag that was sensibly, the weighed a sensible amount, right, Meshach? My bag was not very big. Yeah. Like I had this massive suitcase, and it was heavy, and all these things, and in that, I had my dirty clothes inside of a trash bag, and I had spun it so it would not leak, because I'm sure that stuff was awful smelling. And I had it, and in the hotel room that we had in Orlando at the conference, I had what I thought was a clean shirt, and it was clean, and I was like, oh, I'll put this shirt on just around the hotel room. It's a t-shirt, and I lifted up and I smelled it. And it even though it was just a couple of days removed, I was like, oh, that's what the house smells like in Haiti. Yeah, it smelled fine. It smelled fine. But it just smelled like there. And I was just like, oh. And so I went and grabbed one that Coley brought. And so like that's and but like smells can take us there. And one of my precious memories about smell is when we first moved into our house here, like around 2018, like a dear friend of ours came and visited us. And when she first walked in, and this is our new house, we haven't even been in it a year yet. And we built this house and, like all that stuff. So it was new. And she walked in and the first thing she said was, "Oh, it even smells like your house." There's positive and negatives with that. Like that's like, are we giving off odors? Like Coley and I, we just like a musk is just coming off of us. Like all that stuff. But the thing is, I knew what that meant. I knew what she meant by that. I knew what our house meant to her when we were in Bentonville. It was a house of, she was safe there. She was okay. That when life seemed big and imposing and didn't know what the next day would hold, our house was a house of refuge for her. And so by her coming in and saying, "Oh, it even smells like your guy's house," I knew what that meant to her, right? Like and I think Mark actually has the better story out of our two. His story is when they were in Washington, they were looking for a home there, and they opened up this one closet, and Amy, his wife, said, "Oh, like this just takes me back. It reminds me of what my grandmother smelled like." And the real estate agent was like, "I don't know if that's good. That's mothballs," right? Like that's, but they like these smells like will take you back, they take you back and will cause you to remember things. And smell is the primary idea going on in John chapter 21. It's smell, and the smell of denial, the smell of insecurity, the smell that is just causing Peter to want to run away and cry. That's what's going on. Because Peter, when we read about Peter in the Gospels, he got a lot right. He did a good job a lot of times, but he also got a lot wrong, right? Like we know about his denial. Remember when Jesus was arrested, like Peter was running like just a little bit, like following at a distance so as not to get caught, He's following at a distance. And then he came, and then there all these people are standing around, and like Jesus' trial is just going over on the side, and they're standing around like this fire here, and he denies Jesus. Not once, not twice, but 3 whole times he denies Jesus, and that third one, a rooster crows, and Jesus looks over at him. What do you think Peter was like for a couple weeks there when he would hear a rooster crow? Right? Like it's like he would see a rooster cross the road and he'd freak and run away. Can't even take the joke, right? There's so much pain and hurt that would have been inside of that. And yeah, sure. And this is what's fascinating about the story of John. Jesus appears to the disciples, shows him his scars, appears in the room, shows him the scars and all that. You would think that they'd be like, "Oh, hallelujah, praise be, Jesus is back to life." But that's not what they do in John. Like you can tell that Peter and the disciples have completely lost their way. They've completely lost everything that they know, everything that they love. They don't know what to do about anything. So whenever we get in a situation like that, we always just revert back to what happened previously, right? We always revert back to like, oh, back when life was better for me, let's go back to there. Sometimes that looks like you come back to church. Like the life has deteriorated around you. It's like, well, I got to go back to church, try to get back with God. If that's you, welcome. It's great having you here. It could also be like, well, like I used to be healthy, so I'm going to go back to eating those foods I ate 15, 20 years ago. Yeah, I'm going to go back and do this thing again. I'm going to go back and live this life because like my life is so messed up, I got to go back. But we're never designed to go back like that. It's always just a dream and a fallacy that doesn't actually exist. God is creating a world that moves forward. And we see the disciples trying to go back. They're on a boat fishing just like where Jesus found them. And yet this time when they're throwing their nets over, are they catching anything? No, because they're bad at it now. They're like, we're not even good at the old stuff. And Jesus is like, throw your net on the other side. And they're like, sure, whatever, dude, right? And they get this huge load of fish, 153, it said. And John says, it's the Lord. And Peter then puts on his clothes and jumps into the water, which tells us that Peter was fishing naked. I don't know how you guys fish, but this is why I don't fish. that's and so he jumped in and he runs up to the side to where Jesus is, and Jesus has a fire going. He has a fire going on the beach, and he's got breakfast that he's making for them, right? He's got breakfast. As Peter approaches, he kind of sees all of this, and this is how it describes it in John. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. And you're like, oh, that's like Jesus being nice. It's like when you go on a retreat and you have that, like your one brother or sister or something like that who actually wakes up early and is like, I'm making waffles for everybody. And everyone gets up like that. So it's like, oh, Jesus is being nice there. Maybe. We'll get to that in a second. The reason why is because fire of burning coals is a very interesting word, because that's one word in Greek. It's one word in Greek. And it's this one. You may have to help me around here. So anthrokaion. Is that right? Anthraki? Yeah. Anthrachia? Yeah. Okay. So like that anthrachia. So that's a Greek word for charcoal fire. Specific word for the smells of charcoal, right? And charcoal has an amazing smell. Like there's never a time when you're around like a charcoal fire that you don't smell the charcoal, right? You're like, oh, I'm used to this now. This is great. You know, like that, because some of you're like, I'm going to prove to everyone that I'm a better griller than them. So you're going to endure the struggle of actually cooking on charcoal, right? And you're like, the whole neighborhood will smell it. It'll be great. And like that, there's a specific smell to that charcoal there. And what's wild is that word describes a specific charcoal fire. And there's so many fires mentioned in the Bible. Like Moses in the burning bush, right? Like that fire was mentioned. The pillar of fire by night, right? Like the God consuming the sacrifices with fire. Even the tongues of fire on top of people's heads in Pentecost. All these fires mentioned, but there's only 2 times in the entire Bible where this word is used. This time, describing when Jesus is sitting there with this charcoal fire and some fish. Some of you know this, but does anyone else who doesn't know it have a guess where the other one is? We've already talked about it today. The denial. The denial. John 18. She asked, like, aren't you one of his disciples too? And Peter's like, no, that's not me. And it was cold, and the servants and the officials stood around charcoal fire. It's the same word right there. That they had made to keep warm. And Peter was standing with them, warming himself. Right? Like that's, there it is. It's that same fire, right? And think about that smell of that fire just enveloping, as Peter said 3 times, I don't know who he is. I don't know this Jesus you're talking about. I wasn't with him. Smelling in with each breath, with each denial, smelling that smell, smelling that. And now Jesus says, throw your nets on the other side. Peter throws on clothes, runs up to the beach. How close did he get to the fire before all of a sudden he smelled it and went right back to where he denied Jesus? How close did he get? What was Peter feeling as the disciples were all sitting around Jesus and he's sitting there, and each breath he's reminded of his denial, 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 denial. It's the same smell, and John wants us to know it. Because smell brings back so much. And did Peter want to run away? Remember, when he denied Jesus, he ran away crying, right? Ran away weeping, like how with each breath is he want to just run and run and run, because smell transports us to these places. Jesus is about to absolve Peter. Truly absolve. And my question for us today, because it's a hard question, my question for us today is, why would Jesus create the very worst moment for Peter on that beach? Why does he do it? Because you know that's what he's doing. It's not on accident. Why is Jesus making Peter relive that trauma? Why is he doing that? Why can't Jesus just say, "It's okay, Peter, we just wipe it all away. Feed my lambs. Feed my lambs. Just go do that." Like, why does he do that? Because I think we often treat forgiveness like that. We just give lip service to it. We're like, "Oh yeah, it's forgiven." We move on. We say, we're wiped clean. It's great. Until you see that rooster walking across the street and you're like, and you start crying and you get in the fetal position. Right? Like that's, or you see that person and you feel that hatred and animosity once again. You feel that hurt and pain and that tinge. You hear that one sound and you don't know what to do about it, right? And you realize that not everything is great. Why is Jesus creating this worst moment for Peter, where he can physically smell his own denial, where his failure is there for everyone around him to mock him and to get, and this makes me think about myself. And some of you have heard me talking about this over the last few weeks, as I've been kind of wrestling with this idea about what this charcoal and fish sermons means. Like, and like, what does it really mean to be forgiven? Because for me, when I talk about myself, like, I have a lot of things that I need forgiven. Because I have a lot of scars. I have a lot of pain. I have scars that run deep inside of me. Like, I've had a member of a previous church try to get me fired. He went up and talked to the district president to end my career. This was one church meeting, the big meeting of the year. We were talking about all these great things that the church was doing, and we were doing a lot of great stuff. We had all these new members coming in. Most were not from other churches. Like all these other things, and we're doing all this great stuff, and we got an award from the city for being an amazing citizen as a church. And a guy stood up and said, "That's all great, but I don't think Jesus is blessing what we're doing." I was here a year later to let you know, give you the timeline. But not only those things, but all the little things that have been said over the years that were meant to cut me down, were meant to hurt me, that were meant, these are all scars that I've had, not to mention all the things that I regret ever saying to somebody. And I have this stuff, and it's deep. But the truth is that those scars are who I am. Those pains and the hurts, they are Cris Escher. They've made me the person that is standing in front of you today. The words that I say, the jokes that I tell, the empathy that I have, the way I pastor a church, all of it. Those scars, those pains, they have made me more empathetic. They've made me a little bit more cynical. They made me less trusting of wolves. They've made me lead a certain way, good and bad. Those scars are who I am. And if God came and just said, oh, the scars are just gone. They're fine. They're gone. Get rid of all of those. Let's just erase those scars. Would I be erased? Would I be forgotten? Would I lose who I am? My empathy, my feeling, my stupid jokes. Would I lose who I am? Why does God create this moment, this worst moment for Peter? It's because he wants to absolve Peter. He wants all of Peter. He doesn't want just the postcard Peter. Doesn't want just the ideal Peter that's all fun. He wants the guy, scars and all. He wants him all. I think that's what's going on with Thomas that's in that locked upper room. And he's like, I want to see Jesus' scars because even with all the disbelief, he wants all the pain to be dealt with. He doesn't want just this fake forgiveness and lip service of forgiveness. He wants what's real, true forgiveness, scars and blemishes and all. And that's what I want. I don't want to be forgotten. I don't want to lose the person that I am right now. It's what I need. I think that's what Peter needs. And with each, Peter's heart's racing and he's breathing heavy. Every breath is just getting that memory again and again and again and again. And Jesus sits there and goes, Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Then feed my lambs. Then he asks a second time, Peter, do you love me? Each breath, smell, 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 right? Yes, you know that I love you. Tend my sheep. Then a third time he said to him, third time the amount of his denial, which each breath going into his lungs, reminding him of all that son, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And I think the most unassuming passage there is in all the Bible, Peter was hurt. No. This is devastating. Peter's hurt because Jesus went all the way to the core of his denial and pain and all of that because Jesus didn't want to leave any of Peter behind. And he said to him a third time, do you love me? And he said, Lord, you know all things, you know that I love you. Then feed my sheep. And in that third time, those scars of Jesus, the wounds of Jesus, Jesus on the very cross itself joins together with Peter's scars, joins in with them so that Peter can be fully absolved and forgiven, so that Peter can be truly healed and restored, so that whenever he sees a chicken crossing the road, he doesn't freak out and he can be on the joke, right? Every time that he smells that smoke or hears the rooster crowed, he can still move forward. He brings him to absolution. And this is what Jesus does. This is the Christian story. That Jesus comes and meets us and joins us in the worst moments of our lives, in the hurts and the sins, and he hangs on the cross, like in his wounds and all of that. And he comes and finds us on the crosses that we are bearing. Those ones that we don't even want to have any part of, the hurts and the pains and the ill forgiveness that we are carrying around. He meets us in the bottoms of those places, joining in his wounds with our wounds, his scars with our scars, joining in on it and saying in Greek, telestai, it is finished. It's forgiven. It's done. And by Jesus joining his cross with our cross, his resurrection becomes our resurrection, not just the part that we feel good about. The Sunday morning selves that we like to dress up and say hello to everybody. But even the dirty, nasty stuff, Jesus joins with that and rises it up again so that we all may be saved. So that we may be in on the joke when we see the rooster crossing the road. So that we can be freed from all those smells that trigger us and all those negative emotions. And while this sermon isn't about this thought, I think it's a good one to end on. Because God is not a God of the ideal. God is not a God of the postcard. He is the one that came on the cross and got into all of our mess, our insecurities, and he, from the midst of that mess, says to us, just like he said to Peter, go, feed my lambs. And that is good news. And we'll end right there. Let's say a prayer. Jesus, we thank you that you love us and that you're with us. Guide us in all your ways, Lord. Lord, even when our insecurities and we smell the fires around us and we see the things that trigger us once again, Lord, meet us in those that we can have true forgiveness and be able to heal from all of that. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Thank you for listening to all that.